You are listening to Aim Higher, a Catholic podcast designed to instruct and to encourage the daily practice of our faith. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Aim Higher podcast. I'm Father Anthony, and with me is Sister Catherine. I always feel interesting when I do that transition. It's like, maybe I think it's going, I think we'll do this. It's Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Father Anthony and Sister Catherine. Aim Higher podcast feels a little more natural. I always feel unnatural when I like with Sister Catherine, or I have Sister Catherine. It's not like you surprise me and come on this program. This podcast you're on all the time. It's with us both. It just, I think after how many years are we doing this?
3. Well, I started thinking about what other podcasts I listened to, and I think what happens is someone will start off what the podcast is, introduce themselves, and then the other people will introduce themselves. So we could do that. But I'm like, do we really want to change it? Change is good. Whatever you like.
Do you want to try it? Do you want to try it? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's give it a shot. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Aim Higher podcast. I'm Father Anthony.
And I'm Sister Catherine. How did it feel?
What do you think? I don't know.
Well, see, the thing is, are we going to remember?
Let's do it the other way around. Let's do it the other way around. Okay.
Oh, so I start?
Well, that's the other way around.
Is it?
We've done it. The other way around would be you start. Wait, what? Am I using the term?
No, you probably are. I'm just.
Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Okay. So.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Pax et bonum, peace and good to all. This is the Aim Higher podcast. I'm Sister Catherine.
And I'm Father Anthony. Yeah, I think it flows well. I think we just have to make sure we have enough coffee.
And remember to do it next time. So
yeah. Anyway, I'm going to put a Post-it note right here.
Add it to the collection. Well, I'm not as bad as I used to be with post-it notes, but for a while my nickname was Post-it.
I think there are a few of them I can probably take. What is this? Oh, okay, that's what that Post-it note is. I'm like, what is that Post-it note? Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking at my Post-it notes. I can definitely take this one off. This one. I already did that doctor's appointment, so. But no, it's the Post-it note. It's the thing that helps me remember. And I tell you, it's so true. Writing something down helps the process of memorization so much.
Well, and that's something I was thinking about this week, because there's a lot of online functions, apps where you can track certain habits you want to maintain, and there's some things I really want to get into the habit of, and I have done online apps, and I'm just not. There's something about it that I just don't want to go through the hassle, even though apps are supposed to be convenient, but I'm also trying to minimize the use of the electronics. It's funny because I think a couple of weeks ago I mentioned that I don't need to be so readily available. So why do I have the phone with me?
I'm using an app to get me to stop using apps.
It's not quite like that.
That's kind but it's almost sounded like that.
And I was like, well, no one really calls me. Well, a couple of days later, I started walking to chapel and I realized I didn't have the cell phone on me. I was like, oh, that's okay. No one's going to call me at 4:30 in the morning. And someone did, because they were wondering if we still had mass that day, because sometimes, the bishop's schedule and whatnot. And they decided to come anyway, so it all worked out because we did indeed have mass. So I was like, oh, okay. And also at that same day, my phone stopped working. So it's kind of like, do I really need to have it on me at all times? Still probably not. But anyway,
tis a question.
And I have been trying to set a boundary as far as responses and such. And I think part of that stems is that, when I was working and I was in customer service and you had to answer emails within 15 minutes, it's just, and other things, that stuck with me for a while, and nothing is that urgent in this point in my life. But all that to say, I was thinking about how I got a couple notebooks, and I'm going to actually start writing down every day what I've achieved as far as certain personal goals. I do think pen and paper is what I need for this particular project. I don't know why, but I feel very drawn to pen and paper. I'm just cracking you up today, aren't I?
No, well, it's because I'm just laughing at the idea that I'm going to set certain goals. It's like my first goal is not have my body creak when I stand up. It's my first goal. So drink plenty of water and stretch. I was with who was I talking to? Oh my word! It's not someone I actually
like. Just kidding.
I despise this person. Yeah, I like everybody, just in various degrees. No, who was this? Because it's not someone I normally deal with. Talking about getting older and moving around, and it was the nurse when I went to my doctor's appointment. I said, yeah, to getting up, and I just try to move, and then next thing I know, I snap, crackle, pop. And then it was just like, that's my cereal, snap, crackle, pop, because that's what happens. I'm Rice Krispies. I'm gonna Rice Krispie this one because I'm so stiff. That's my goal, just not to have everything crack, but
Well, part of the reason why I have my alarm set for 3:30 is because I need time to stretch, because for various reasons I just can't. I would love to rise and shine and give God the glory, as my little alarm.
Yeah, the glory.
The children singing.
Give God the glory.
Which my phone reset this morning, and that was not the alarm that went off. Kind of threw me, but maybe that's what I needed. It's just a generic.
Okay. I don't know. It was like a
like yours. That would
that's
probably
my alarm.
That would probably put me in.
But Brother Thomas found an alarm that I was like, I don't know where you got it. I was like, I'm looking to see if my phone has that alarm. I can't find it. It says like dun 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 dun.
Well, it depends.
I'm like,
it depends on what phone he has versus yours, I'm sure.
True. I don't know if we have the same kind of. I don't know. I think we both have Androids, but I said I'm gonna go with a classic.
Yours is yours.
It's
like, everybody's gonna love that part of the podcast.
I'm not gonna be sleeping through that. And hold, I have.
Yes. When I first heard you use that one, I was like, oh, I can see why he needs that. I would personally wake up angry every day. Of course, but how angry could I be? Because that was my choice. But I figured, I mean, there was a couple of times I think I got up before you.
Wake up irate.
I woke up before you and I could hear your alarm, because where you were sleeping was near where I was working. Because like, I'm up, might as well do some computer work. And you hit snooze a couple of times, like you do.
That was in Rochester?
No, when I was in Wisconsin last year.
Oh, okay.
And I was like,
yeah,
are you going to get up? And I feel like
I've been using that alarm for that long, yeah.
And I don't, try to be disciplined that you should get up right when your alarm goes off. But I set my alarm purposely extra early because I need that time to kind of move. So, plus getting up off the floor is a little trickier.
Although it is amazing. It is amazing how quickly a person can move when you have a horrible Charlie horse. Mm-hmm. As how quickly you can get up. It's like I'm a spry 18-year-old again. And, then I go back to being 40.
Yeah, that's right. You are 40 now.
I am. I just had the conversation with somebody about that.
Kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so my
I'm
goal
sorry.
is.
Wait, I'm being retrospective right now. Moment of silence.
Who's gonna be
Okay,
silent?
I'm old.
Oh. And isn't it funny because you tell people you're getting old? Every time I tell Father Joseph I'm getting old, he just laughs at me. I was like, well,
it's like,
probably when he was.
I'm old. He's like, you know what, Father Joseph? I'm now older than when I first met you.
Right. Well, probably for a while because wasn't he in his early 30s?
It's true, but he doesn't need to know that. He's in Mexico.
I think I did know that, but I think it does kind of blow his mind knowing that he knew us as children, and here we are, we're in our 40s. So it's kind of
right.
I mean, but that's also how I feel seeing a lot of these children, including our nephews. We have a nephew who's 20 and we have a nephew who's 18.
Yeah.
But
when
it
did
happens.
that happen?
It happens. So
Right.
anyway. But pen and paper is my goal, to write stuff down. So
yeah, pen and paper. It does seem more final when you write things down, even if it's in pencil. It's just, yeah, I know.
I just feel like I might be more committed, and it will be a different form of discipline.
I would be interested in calligraphy if I wasn't so lazy. And
I know what you mean.
Just taking the nice time and actually, it's like if I take my time, if I take 15 minutes each letter, I could really do some nice ones.
Well, I've seen some videos on how to do certain things. It's like, okay, but what would I use it for? At this point, it's like, but what would I use it for?
Yeah.
When would I, it'd be neat. Kind of like, now granted, embroidery probably could be advantageous and useful to a point, but right now because I really would love just have something to keep my hands busy. Because as I listen to things, I need to like doodle or keep my hands busy in order to focus. That's the kind of learner that I am. I've learned to accept it, because for a while I was like, oh no, that's not right. You need to sit and watch and pay attention to the lecture, or take real notes.
Sometimes you have to do that, but
sure. But at least nowadays you can record what you're listening to, or you're already listening to a recording, which is nice. But oftentimes I need to have my hands busy. So it'd be neat to be able to learn, and maybe at some point I will. It's kind of like also learning how to knit or crochet. I'm interested in doing those things, but then but for what purpose? What would I knit or crochet for? What? And you could say, well, you could learn how to make scarves and hats and give them to the homeless. Like, I absolutely could, but I already do some sort of work like that already by making dresses. So, I mean, if anything, if I was going to really learn how to, for something for someone in need, I shouldn't say homeless, someone in need, would be socks, because that's like one of the number one things people need. But I think socks are pretty hard. So
feet.
I mean, and how many scarves and whatnot am I going to make before I get to that level? And ultimately time, like, so
yeah,
it's just not there. So, but I want to make the time. One of the things I've already been doing this year is more focus on reading, not reading for to work on whatever we're gonna do for a podcast, not reading for whatever publication we're working on.
We don't read for the podcast. We don't prepare anything. We just wing it.
Some people might believe that, actually.
Well, I kind of feel we're winging it right now. I wasn't planning for it to be like this, but this is nice.
You started
we're waking up. We're waking up.
Well, I've been up for a little while now, but we tried to record yesterday afternoon, and it was late enough in the afternoon where I had already peaked for the day, so it was probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm just getting started, so.
Yeah.
But more attentive in spiritual reading is what I'm trying to make more time for. So, and currently I'm reading, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's A Way to Happiness by Bishop Sheen.
Okay.
The chapters are short, but I don't know. I think I saw the recommendation on social media, so that there are advantages to those things. But I'm enjoying it.
One thing that I'm doing is especially a lot of like shorter books, and this was one that we had, and it was Sister Cecilia brought it to my attention, and it's the gift of self to God, which is something I've brought up the last few podcasts, and I like it. It's a really nice book written by Father Nicholas Grew, which in our community we know as has the morality according to the Confessions of St. Augustine, which is a mainstay as far as morning meditation, and it was for many, 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 many years. And it's an excellent little book. Well, one thing I remember, like Bishop Lewis told me about when it comes to reading, um, everyone's different in how they read. Some people are, I have my one book, and that's the only book I'm going to be reading. I'm only going to read this one book until I finish it. And I mean, if it's a novel, something you're really engaged in, it's really what you want to read. You want to go, see what happens next. Uh, when it comes to spiritual books, and if you look at a spiritual book as being like a textbook, it's really what it is in many ways. It's one that you're meant to take in and absorb bit by bit by bit. So having like you mentioned, like short little chapters, it's just what Bishop Sheen wrote it. It was Bishop Sheen, right? Fulton J. Sheen. Okay. Bishop Sheen wrote it that way for that purpose. So like this book here by Father Grew, really short chapters, humility of heart, short chapters. The book that I'm put a lot of focus upon right now, which is Introduction to a Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. I have copies available, $10 a copy, 15 including shipping. With shipping. It's such an excellent little book to read, but I find that I can take a few little books here, and read a little bit, throughout the day. Don't have to just read the one book. I like that. There's also one book that I found. I don't think is one that's readily available to people. It's one of those really old little books. I got it from Father Bernard, and it was the retreats with the Divine Retreat Master. I forget who wrote it. Maybe you have it, and it's written specifically for priests. You'd be some of the laity may be surprised to hear how many books of spirituality are directed primarily towards the priest and his vocation, because what we experience in this spiritual combat is a little bit different. And it's because of the vocation. It's because of, well, as our Lord said, to whom much is given, much is expected. And the devil, he really focuses a lot of his intention upon the priest. So these books are designed to help through those daily struggles, because just like any vocation, you have your days where it is easier than others, and you have days where you're just not running away from your vocation, but you're just like run down.
Yeah, and you're just trying to get through the day.
And but the same advice goes for the priest as goes for anybody. Those are the days that could be the most spiritually profitable.
Absolutely.
Because you offer them up and you work through it, even though you have no consolation that day. But you do it for the greater honor and glory of God. Not for us, Lord, not for us, but to thy name give glory.
I can't remember who the quote was by. It might have been, maybe it's St. Augustine, but I'll look it up later. But it had, and I'm not even going to get it verbatim, but it had something to do with you gain more by practicing patience than a day of fasting. Something along those lines. Like,
oh boy. That'd be an interesting game to play. Name the quote. Because there could be so many.
Well, today being the feast of St. Francis de Sales, he's got I've got a couple collected somewhere that I really like of his. So I'll probably be putting those up on social media to share. I like a good quote. I like things like simple, like short chapter books, because it, especially when it comes to spiritual things, you're trying to digest it. And I know I'm still, it's one of those things that amazes me because I know you do it. I confident Father Joseph does it, and I see the bishop do it all the time. When you prepare for any sermon, what you're going to write, you pull out these big books, Fathers of the Church. You're reading all this content, and you all, and I know this is something that you work towards, and there's definitely like higher intellect. I think you all have that within you, but I just marvel at, you watch the bishop, he'll sit probably for an hour reading what various fathers of the church have to say about a particular Sunday or feast.
Yeah.
Or right now, I think he's diving into the sacraments for the seraph, so series on the sacraments. So he's getting into, sacramental theology and all, reading a lot of detail.
Diving into it.
And then he, what he does is he reads, he goes and does something at them, and he's pondering on it, and then he sits down, he's writing. I mean, the number of articles that all of you do, and even the sermons, it just blows my mind. And I know that there's a lot of people that do that. I'm not going to be able to do that. I said, well, have you really tried? I said, I'm not that type of learner.
It's a discipline.
So, it's a discipline.
And it's one thing I know we talked about this privately. And this is something that I wish I understood during my seminary days. I think I would have absorbed things better, but the method of really retaining what you read. And one thing that I utilized it this last week by my sermon, because I decided to talk about the cord bearers. And I took the book on the cord bearers, and you read it using a guide. I was told, like, using something, a guide, like your finger pen, is not good. And I'm like, no, it's actually very useful, because it forces your eyes to move along and not get lazy. So I find it a very useful tool. And then going through the text and highlighting what I find interesting, what was a point. Then I go back, I read it over, and then I'm taking notes on my note card. So I have a little set of note cards for the cord bearer. I could actually, Pope Sextus V, 1547, 1548, he officially confirmed the order. I mean, now these things are in my head. Now, as far as how I can, recall them, take a little bit, but this was very useful for me. So I don't remember the YouTube channel it was, a man who explained this, and I thought it was very, very useful. And if it could help me absorb more.
Well, and realizing what type of learner you are is very helpful. And
yes.
I was listening to a talk about that. So I've come to terms to figure out more or less how I learn. It's just, when you have an older sibling who was very book smart, like he just devoured books, he loved school. I mean, he probably would have stayed in some sort of education, just taking classes. Well, I mean, in some ways, I guess he did his whole life. But but that's what he loved. But to be the sibling that follows someone like that is hard, because it's like, well, your brother could do it. Your brother did this. And I know people didn't mean or weren't thinking. They might have meant what they said, but they just weren't really thinking about what they were saying. And to come to realize that I'm not James.
Cat's out of the bag. That's the one you're talking about.
It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't bring up, a few people, I guess.
Yes, no.
But it really wasn't probably until the last, coming here and then starting to teach in some form that I found my way to teach, what works for me and how I learn. But if you saw my note taking, it's horrendous when I'm listening to things, and Like I'm not the person you want to borrow notes from. So,
Can I borrow your notes?
I mean, a couple Post-it
All
notes.
there are doodles in here.
I have a note somewhere in the other room.
Are you kidding?
It's
I'm in the perfect circle.
It's on a card. I have no idea what this note means. No idea. But it was important enough that I had to write it down and put it somewhere where I'd see it. And I probably put it up there 5-6 years ago. And I'm looking at it, I was like, I know that's important. It's not hurting anything. It'll just stay there for now. But
boy, I hope it's not like, yeah, in 5 years, you need to make sure this is accomplished.
We'll find out. So,
oh boy. Oh boy.
This is fun. So we're going to talk about.
Yeah, what are we going to? Yeah,
Candlemas Day.
Get to the topic, huh? We were going to actually. We are going to talk about something. Yeah. You just said Candlemas Day, right?
I did.
Is that what you just said?
I did.
That is not what I heard when I registered right away. I do not know what I thought you said.
Hopefully it wasn't anything bad.
No, it wasn't. I would have been scandalized. I would have
edit that out.
Yes. This as we're doing the podcast, this coming Sunday will be the Feast of the Purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or in English-speaking countries, Candlemas Day.
And we're really excited about it, partly because it falls on a Sunday.
Yep.
So, I mean, and I'm sure you're going to share with us what your big plans are, but even for here, I plan to do some really nice bouquets for the altar.
That's I ordered some bouquets for the day because it doesn't land on Sunday all the time, and the problem is when with the logistic situation, you can't have always going to have a lot of people be able to attend. Although I have to say, as of late, when I let people know of feasts that are not holy days but are of significance, people who are able to do come, which is nice. This day now is on a Sunday. Candlemas Day, it begins before Mass with the blessings of the candles, and with the blessing, there's the incensation or incensing. That the other way, I think that's correct. It just doesn't sound right. But the incensing, and follow with all that a procession, and as the prayers are done, there's the chanting, and it's a very beautiful ceremony, and the idea is that the people to have candles with them and to process around the nave of the church. I haven't done that in years. The last time we had Candlemas Day on a Sunday, I did do a procession. It was just myself and the servers going around the nave, but this year plan to have the whole congregation take part and to actually have their candles. It's going to take a little longer. I've told people, because my goal, my intention is that I will be blessing all of the candles in the nave of the church, everything. So everything we use for devotional candles will be blessed for Candlemas Day.
Now, I'm sure most of our listeners may know, but will you explain what the name of the church is for those of us who might not know?
Yeah, the name of the church is where the parishioners, the congregation sits, where you have the pews. Basically, it's behind the communion rail. Anything, or I should say, behind the communion rail. In front of the communion rail is the sanctuary. So it's, am I saying that right?
No, it's a sound. It is correct. Yeah. Because when you think of order of importance, obviously the altar, the sanctuary, is the most important. So anything following it would be behind it. It's just because we enter from the back.
Yeah, we enter from the back. It feels weird, but it's a communion rail, and then you have the pews, and that's the nave of the church. So I will be processing around with the holy water, which, Father, remember, you need to bless some holy water. Because I'm running low, which is good. People are using it.
Yep.
But to go around and bless everyone, and then incense, and then going around incensing everyone, or the candles actually, and then a few more prayers, and you go down. Then you move on to the procession, and we'll see how well it works. It's like I said, it's been a while since we've done it, and it is a festival of lights. It is a feast of lights, and I have a memory of Candlemas Day when I was a boy, and when we were in 52nd in Lisbon, going upstairs to church, Father Bernard saying mass, and I just have the memory of us, with candles and doing a little procession around there, and those little things stand out in my mind.
I do not have a memory from our childhood of that, but I do remember it was after we moved to Wabaka that it was the Feast of Purification happened on a Saturday, and I was able to come to Saturday Mass, and there were a few other members there, and I remember we did a small procession, and Father said, "Well, why don't we sing O Santissima?" It's like, great, and that's gonna be our recessional for Sunday.
That's our recessional for Sunday.
That's one of my common picks anyway, because I find when we sing in Latin, it works better, but it's also it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so it's going to be nice. These things are done, for the edification of the faithful.
And I realize probably the extra stuff isn't always going to be someone's cup of tea, but also we need to bring these things back. And it should be. I mean, I just don't want. Well, you should really be appreciative, and you should really like this, but you should.
Well, it helps when you have an affinity towards it, to ceremony.
Well, when you talk it up and you're excited about it, I'm sure there are a lot of people at Our Lady of the Rosary that are looking forward to this. I actually don't think there's probably anybody's like, oh, I ain't going, because, well, if you don't go, it's a Sunday obligation.
I'm not gonna make this,
well, then you're missing out on a lot. We're not going to get into like the tragedy of that mindset if you have it. I don't think that that's anyone
necessary.
But no, this is just really. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit far apart. I do think the bishop's planning on doing Blessing of the Candles down in Kentucky. Don't quote me on this, people. I do believe that is his plan, because, well, he has a later flight going out of Kentucky, so it just works. And the people down there are motivated too. Like they want to do more things, which, because we talked about, we've shared past the things that we've been doing over the years, and it has done so much good. And we just let's keep doing it. The church has supplied us with so many ways for connecting with each other, but also with our faith, with God. And it's like, let's bring that back. And if it means, spend a little extra on flowers this week because it's a big feast day, we should. I mean,
or a lot extra.
I'm gonna see what I mean. I'm only gonna put 2 bouquets up. Anyone that's been to Rochester, we don't have a very big chapel, but I'm still gonna try to find something nice to put together. But even if you did spend a little extra, why not? I mean, it helps show how important these things should be to us.
Yeah, I can push it to another Sunday before Septuagesima.
There you go. Which will be here before we know it.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, okay, well, then we'll just, I'll just give it off our food. What do we have to eat this week? We'll go to flowers. No, it's not quite that.
Yeah, we're not going to get any donuts on Sundays for a while.
We don't have donuts. So, just making the time and appreciating it. And I'm excited. I probably will tune in to live stream, provided that everything's working.
I'm trying to re-implement things that we've done, and it's just, and especially COVID was a thing that shook a lot of things up that you just stopped doing. One of the things I'm going to be bringing back, it's actually in the bulletin for this coming Sunday, is that we will be doing Tuesday night benediction, St. Anthony, which, by the way, and I might as well ask you now, I'm thinking about it. Do we have any extra copies of the booklet? Like would he be able to give me like 12?
Sure.
All right. Now we have it recorded.
And I'm committed. I'll probably give you 15 because for some reason I like odd numbers for certain things.
Well, then why not 13?
I also like we'll do the 5 better.
All right. Hey, you know what? I'm not arguing.
But see, but I would give you, if you had asked for 18, I give you 20, not 19. I don't make sense. Okay.
You're
Well, of course, 13.
Capricious with your rules here.
Of course, 13 would kind of make sense as far as the St. Anthony Novena is concerned because it's the 13th Tuesday. So,
but let's just do 15. No, I'm committed to 13 now.
And worst case scenario, I have I can send you the PDF and you can print your own. But I'm pretty sure we have plenty of printed copies to send you.
I could print my own. Yeah, I mean, I could do that.
I'm going to the post office tomorrow, Father.
Well, send me the PDF anyway.
Okay.
But still send me the other stuff and just let me know how much. Anyway, we got our business out of the way, folks.
$1,100.
All right, I will.
Why not $1,300?
Well, not 13. Oh, we'll just do 15.
I'll send you an invoice.
What was the last invoice you said? How much was it? $1 million.
It was something like that.
$1 million.
It was an official. It was official looking.
It was an official invoice. I'm still paying it off. Well, on this lovely feast is what we're looking to talk about a little bit more in depth. I was be reading from. I'm still going to read from Father Francis Weiser's The Holyday Book, which. Oh yeah, I got my copy here too. And anyone who's been listening to this podcast for a while knows
and still listens.
It's like 3 of my favorite books. His Christmas book, his Easter book, and his Holyday book is a reference for me. And if you enjoy history and customs, I have not found a better book, especially for those of us in the United States.
And if you're like me, who wants to like history and likes elements of history, but in small doses, this is also a really good book. So,
okay, this is in chapter 7 of this book, and it begins. The law of Moses prescribed that every Jewish mother, after giving birth to a boy child, was to be excluded from attendance at public worship for 40 days. At the end of that period, she had to present a yearling lamb for a holocaust and a pigeon for sin offering, thus purifying herself from ritual uncleanliness. In the case of poor people, 2 pigeons sufficed as an offering. Leviticus 12, 2-8. The Gospel reports how Mary, after the birth of Jesus, fulfilled this command of the law, and how, on the same occasion, Simeon and Anna met the newborn Savior. Since Christ himself was present at this event, it came to be celebrated quite early as a festival of the Lord. The first historical description of the feast is given in the diary of Egeria, a lady from Rome, the Roman province of Spain, who made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 380. She mentions that the services in Jerusalem began with a solemn procession in the morning, followed by a sermon on the gospel text of the day, and finally Mass was offered. At that time, the festival was kept on February 14th because the birth of Jesus was celebrated on the Feast of the Epiphany, January 6th. It had no special name, but was called the 40th day after Epiphany. From Jerusalem, the feast spread into the other churches of the Orient. The Armenians called it the coming of the Son of God into the temple, and still celebrate it on February 14th. In the Coptic Egyptian rite, it is termed the presentation of the Lord in the temple. The East Roman Emperor Justinian I in 542 prescribed it for the whole country as a public holy day in thanksgiving for the end of a great pestilence. By that time it was known in the Greek Church under the title Hypapante Kyrio, the meeting of the Lord, in commemoration of Christ's meeting with Simeon and Anna. According to the Gospel, Simeon, holding the Christ child in his arms, said, "Now dost thou dismiss thy servant, O Lord." The word "now" prompted the Christians of the Orient to believe that Simeon, having seen the Savior, died on the same day. Thus they made Candlemas also the annual feast of Simeon. Hence the Chaldeans and the Syrians, even today, call the festival Eid Shamun al-Shaki, Feast of Simeon the Old Man. In the Western Church, the commemoration of this event appeared first in the liturgical books Gelasianum and Gregorianum of the 7th and 8th centuries. It bore the title Purification of Mary and was listed for February 2nd, 40 days after Christmas. It has often been said that the feast was introduced in Rome to replace by liturgical procession the pagan torch parades of the Lupercalia, which had been held in ancient Rome on February 15th. Such explanations, however, are judged erroneous by modern scholars, for the festival was never kept on February 15th in the Western Church. Moreover, there was no procession of lights in the beginning, and the pagan custom of Lupercalia had long been discontinued by the time the procession was inaugurated. As a matter of fact, over 300 years intervened between the last parade of the Lupercalia and the first procession of Candlemas. It was Pope Sergius I in 701 who prescribed the procession with candles, not only for the feast of the Purification, but also for the other feasts of Mary, which were then annually celebrated in Rome: the Annunciation, Assumption, Nativity of Mary. The procession was first instituted as a penitentiary rite with prayers imploring God's mercy. Hence, the Church uses the penitential color of purple, even now, for the blessing of the candles and the procession. And that's true.
So you'll be wearing your violet?
We wear my violet during the blessing of the candles, yes. Because there's also an element of, well, not an element, there's part in the prayer with, it's just an exorcism. So it's just like with holy water. The original rite of Pope Sergius did not provide for any blessing of candles. The celebrant in those early centuries distributed to the clergy for the procession candles that were neither blessed nor lighted. The ceremony of blessing originated at the end of the 8th century in the Carolingian Empire, and I just laugh because I know how to say Carolingian, but for some reason, and did most of the other liturgical blessings, such as Easter fire, Easter water, palms, etc. In the present liturgical usage, the officiating priest blesses candles before the Mass. He sings or recites 5 prayers of blessing, 2 of which are given here in the English translation. Okay. O holy Lord, almighty Father, eternal God, thou hast created all things from nothing. Thou hast commanded the bees to produce this liquid of wax, which has been made into a perfect candle. Thou hast on this day fulfilled the petitions of the just Simeon. We humbly implore thee through the invocation of thy holy name and through the intercession of Mary, ever Virgin, whose feast we devoutly celebrate today. Also through the prayers of all thy saints, deign to bless and sanctify these candles for human use, For the welfare of body and soul, both on land and on water, these thy servants desire to carry them in their hands, while they praise thee with their hymns. Hear their voices graciously from thy holy heaven, and from the throne of thy majesty. Be merciful to all who cry to thee, whom thou hast redeemed by thy precious blood of thy Son, who lives and reigns with thee, God, forever and ever. Amen. Second prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, true light that enlightens every man who comes into this world, bestow thy blessing upon these candles and sanctify them with the light of thy grace, as these tapers burn with visible fire and dispel the darkness of night, which so may our hearts with the help of thy grace, be enlightened by the invisible fire of the splendor of the Holy Ghost, and may be free from all blindness of sin. Clarify the eyes of our minds that we may see with what is pleasing to thee and conducive to our salvation. After the after the dark perils of this life, let us be worthy to reach the eternal light. Through thee, Jesus Christ, Savior of the world, who in perfect Trinity livest and reignest, God, forever and ever. Amen. It ends the prayer. After the blessing, the celebrant distributes the candles to the clergy and faithful, who carry them in their hands during the solemn procession. Meanwhile, the choir sings the Canticle of Simeon, Nunc Dimittis, and various antiphons. The symbolism of the light procession is obvious from the antiphon, that that is repeated after every verse of the canticle. Lumen ad revelationem gentium, a light of revelation to the Gentiles. It represents Christ, the light of the world, as at his presentation in the Temple of Jerusalem. From the blessing of candles and the procession of lights comes the names of the feast in most countries. Candlemas in English, Lichtmas in German, Candelas, Spanish, Candelora, Italian, Chandeleur, French, Hieronice, the Feast of Candlemas among the Slavics and Czechs. Not a clue if I pronounced that right.
Well, maybe our friends in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, maybe you all know how to pronounce that.
I'm sure they know. Maybe they'll tell us.
You would know. They would know. It's Czech. Zvihidlo Marhiono, the light of Mary in Yugoslavia. So the Slavs of the Eastern Rite, Russians, Ukrainians call it Meeting of the Lord. Stretenhije Gospoda. Gospoda. Yeah. Okay. The procession is always held on February 2nd, even when the Mass and office are transferred to another day. In most places, it is now held inside the church, but in past centuries, the church used to proceed into the open and walk through the churchyard, past the graves of departed parishioners. During medieval times, a custom developed in Rome of the Pope distributing blessed candles after the services from a window of his palace. Naturally, many incidents and accidents occurred. People pressed and pushed each other, quarrels and fights ensued. Sorry. Really, people? Come on. I understand devotion, but geez. And sometimes a person was trampled to death. Oh,
It sounds like a Black Friday disaster.
right?
I mean, it's just silliness, people.
Yeah. Pope Gregory the 13th abolished this ceremony, which we should also abolish Black Friday with that, logic, in 1573 because of these abuses. In its place, there appeared another custom at the end of the 18th century. Representative of the clergy and laity of Rome offer large and beautiful decorated candles to the Holy Father every year on February 2nd. The Pope receives the candles in the hall of the consistory and afterward distributes them to poor churches in his diocese. In some countries, the faithful use large and adorned candles, excuse me, which they bring along, for the blessing. Among the Syrians and Chaldeans, the sexton or the sacristan of the parish church prepares these candles, which are made of unbleached wax and painted with designs of gold. In Central and Eastern Europe, people bring candles and tapers of various colors, decorated with flower motifs, holy pictures, and liturgical symbols. After the blessing, they take them home and keep them all through the year as cherished sacramentals to be lighted during storms and lightning in sick rooms and at the bedside of dying persons. The Poles have a beautiful legend that Mary, the Mother of God, Mary, we know the Mother of God, but Mary, the Mother of God of the Blessed Thunder Candle. Oh, I'm going to read that again. Mother of God of the Blessed Thunder Candle. That's our English translation of this. I'm going to spare you all my try to read Central European, Polish. Maybe I won't. No, I will, because it's just watches. Okay, I'll read it. Let me start again. The Poles have a beautiful legend that Mary, the Mother of God of the Blessed Thunder Candle, watches on wintry nights around Candlemas when hungry wolves are on the rampage outside the sleeping village. With her thunder candle, she wards off the ravenous pack and protects the peasants from all harm. Well, that explains the picture right in the front. A little picture here for those of you who are on YouTube. I'll just kind of
okay. I was like, wait, I don't have a picture.
Hold up the picture. You don't have one?
No, I do not. I was expecting a picture right then and there, but you meant at the beginning of the chapter.
A picture right at the beginning of the chapter here. And
depiction.
And as I was saying, this is a pretty neat picture, but what is it? It's the thunder candle. I'm sorry, my mind goes to Thundercats.
I'll admit it kind of did for me too, but I was going to.
Yeah, it's but it's an English translation, so you lose something when you translate. Yeah, you do. But
English is very interesting. I'll leave it there.
But with her thunder candle, she wards off. Sorry, it just sounds. With her thunder candle, she wards off the ravenous pack and protects the peasants from all harm. In ancient times, the tenant farmers had to pay their rent at Candlemas. After this disagreeable task, they were entertained by the landlord with a sumptuous banquet. Candlemas is also the term day for rural laborers in most countries in Central Europe and England. Both farmhands and maids who have hired themselves out for the coming season move in with their new masters and begin work on February 3rd. So this just kind of shows how in medieval Europe, how the church calendar was so much a part of their daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how they really saw like one day to another, or one time or week to another, and making most of each season. And as you can see, it was a time I guess for us it's kind of like April 15th. That is tax day, so it's not something that's very enjoyable. I'm sure it's not enjoyable to have to, especially if you don't have the money to have to pay this. And Candlemas Day seems to be kind of like, I'm not looking forward to Candlemas Day. But yeah,
the next paragraph is very interesting to me.
Well, you started reading it ahead of me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It just caught my eye.
Okay. All over Europe, Candlemas was considered one of the great feasts of weather forecasting, because you had the thunder candle. Popular belief claims that bad weather and cloudy skies on February 2nd mean an early and prosperous summer. If the sun shines through the greater part of Candlemas Day, there will be at least 40 more days of cold and snow. Oh. This superstition is familiar to all. This superstition is familiar to all in our famous story of the groundhog looking for his shadow on Candlemas Day. I'll be Groundhog Day.
I never
That's
thought
right,
of,
Groundhog Day.
I never thought about it because I never really paid attention to the whole groundhog because
I
mom,
never.
we all know it's ridiculous. But as I
The
started reading this
groundhog.
paragraph, I'm glad they followed up like this superstition. So this is not the church advocating
Yeah.
that this is what it means. It's like this superstition, but how
Groundhog, the thunder candle, it's all coming together. But I kind of making light of it in a way, but it just shows that how much the faith was a part of everyday life. And where did this, and it's a superstition, uh could it just have occurred, um happened one time in a region? Were the people praying for an end of the winter because it was a real harsh one, and they were blessed at that time, and God directly intervening, or would say the Blessed Mother intervening on our behalf, and actually occurring because of the faith of the people, and it was carried on by the following generations, unfortunately then almost becoming superstition, which it's kind of a dangerous thing with customs that you have to be very careful with, because you could become superstitious with it. So you have to keep yourself grounded in the faith and making sure you understand the spiritual meaning behind it. Because we talk about, like I was saying, the thunder candle.
Was it the candle?
What does that what does that represent? That Mary in her intercession, the power of her intercession, and warding off the dangers, in this case, wolves. That's what it. And thunder is a very powerful occurrence in nature, and just as the Blessed Virgin Mary is a very powerful occurrence in the supernatural.
Yeah, it's funny when it comes to superstitions, and I try not to be too much of a stick in the mud, but I have started correcting people, and the bishop told me I should.
All right, which stick in the mud? Which stick in the mud?
The one that gets me is the knock on wood. I don't know, and I don't know where it originated from, but I have stopped people. I was like, okay, do you realize how silly that is? And I said that's a superstition, and you as a Catholic should not be doing that. Just say if God wills. Just if God, because that's what it is. If God wills, this will happen, or this won't happen.
When you understand where that I feel we've talked about this before on the podcast, but when you do 3 years, is you probably have talked about it, but it comes from the idea that the old belief that there were spirits who dwelled in the trees. So you cut down the wood, and you're like, okay, knock on wood. I can't remember if it was either to expel the spirits, if they were bad spirits, or letting them know you're going to be using this. If you remember that really kind of surreal, kind of creepy puppet version of Pinocchio, I think it was Rankin Bass.
Oh yeah.
If you remember that one.
Yes, I do. Actually, I was talking to someone about that.
That was promoted. That was talked about in that, because if you remember, Geppetto had that stump of wood, and you could hear it.
Well, so is that Pinocchio's Christmas?
I think so.
Okay, because what's funny about that is that not only is that element in there, but I remember Dad pointing out to us when we watched it, because there's a song in there of the two bad guys, and they're going on about how it's the honest truth or lightning strike that tree, and he said that's an issue. That's, I guess, blasphemy. because you're tempting God.
You are essentially,
So
because you might
uh,
not be addressing God, but he is the author, he is the creator, he is the one who organizes nature. So you are asking.
And I'm sure some people are like, okay, like, is that nitpicky? Like, was our dad like overdoing it? It's like, well, he didn't forbid us really watching it, but we also grew out of it because it's stupid. Amazing how much of it I remember, but
it is.
you just, it's good to kind of, if you're going to watch certain things, or when it comes to fairy tales and whatnot, those are good catalysts for conversations. When you talk about right and wrong and stuff like that. So
yeah,
but that's why there's always that encouragement that parents need to be, or all adults need to be aware of what their children are watching, what children are watching, what's out there. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there. I have no idea what movies are popular now, and I don't care. But there can be a lesson in things, and I'm not talking like, well, then we should watch clearly immoral things so we can know what not to. Like, no, that's not how this works. But the thing is, we can find fault in really anything man-driven because we're fallen creatures. But when we look to things that God has orchestrated, God has put together, it all makes sense. So it's just one of those things where I know, like, the whole knock on wood, people have probably just been doing it, not thinking about it. It's what their mom, dad did. It's what grandma did, whatever. But I'm just trying to encourage us to be more intentional about what we say and do, because we should. Just as, as I brought up. Oh, go ahead.
I have laughed at someone going, "Oh, knock on particle board."
Well, I remember correcting someone, and you were there, and they're like, "Well, this isn't even wood. This is Formica." So, but I get that was probably just like deflecting, because correction is not fun. So no one likes to do it, but it's a necessary thing. And for me, I try to just say, I know you aren't thinking about it, but we need to start thinking about it, what we say to. And just kind of like, as I have brought up on the podcast, is the whole referring to anyone but God as adorable. That, I let it go a lot. Because I get that is just common throwdown.
It's so used now, and people
But I think if you're someone that really wants to grow in your faith, let that be something that you correct. I mean, you want to pick out all these other things that you might see your neighbor doing or you see yourself doing, but why is this something that you're just kind of indifferent to? And for me, I don't think we should be very indifferent to it. But like I said, I let it go. But I am going to try to work it more into my actual catechism as I go along, because second commandment, and just kind of at least impress upon the mind that this is something this is a term you should really take seriously.
Yes.
And why. So, and like I said, I try not to be too.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to be a pest about it, but you have to remind people, and it's the only way we learn. Just like with children, you have to repeat, and we adults are no different. We have to have things repeated to us to remind us of these things, and to remind us to make the conscious effort. And when we do slip up and say that, recognize and say, "Well, I shouldn't say it that way," because it's if God, we should say, "Well, if God wills,"
how beautiful is that? Or say it in Latin: "Fiat voluntas tua, thy will be done." I like that one.
Or you can say Deus vult.
Deus vult. That's one of your favorites. But it's just interesting how, and I'm glad for the change in the sense, because you grew up asking questions show that you weren't learning properly. Like you didn't study hard enough, and you to ask questions was a form of weakness. And now I'm seeing more, and I'm very grateful for it. People are actually reaching out to you, to me, the bishop, Father Joseph, with, I don't know this answer. Instead of just like maybe ignoring what you need to know, you actually are outright asking. And, maybe the initial thought is like, well, why are you asking? How do you not know this? And then you stop and think, like, be grateful that they're asking. you know, because they could just like, well, let me just go on ignorance. Like that's not going to solve anything. So even though it can be like, why are you asking this? Shouldn't you have learned this already? But there's a lot of elements that don't come up and you have to revisit. And so all that to say is don't hesitate to ask the questions. I'm grateful for it. I may not always have the answer right away, but
let your faith, help fuel your understanding. I believe in order that I may understand. And yeah.
And as we've talked about, the book My Catholic Faith covers pretty good deal. Is one catechism book to have in your home next
a good great reference.
Yeah.
My Catholic Faith.
Yeah. Sorry, I forget that. I'm using.
Wasn't sure. I was thinking, wait, I didn't shake.
No, well, now that I'm using the camera off the laptop, I have to remember that not to touch the laptop. So. Anyway.
Well, I have one more page left
to
this section here in Candlemas. We'll finish it. In rural sections of Austria, it is held an omen of blessing and good luck if the sun breaks through the cloudy sky just for a few minutes to cast its radiant glow upon the earth. Okay. Children wait for this moment and greet the appearance of sunlight with a little song like this one from the province of Vorarlberg. I guess that's how you would say it. Sound like I'm gargling when I try to say it. I bet it's beautiful in the Austrian language. Hail, glorious herald, holy light. God sends you from his heaven bright. Your cheerful glow and golden rays may bring us happy summer days. Let us through earthly toil and strife to everlasting light and life. Okay. I wanted to finish reading this before saying anything else but it was, here we see something that we say, it talks here an omen, a blessing of good luck and all these things, and we think of superstition. But is a fine line between trusting in God, faith in miracles, and then trusting in the occurrence in nature itself. So that's understanding what the difference is between superstition and magic, as what I would call it, black magic. Understanding those things have their source in pride, and trusting something outside of God to procure some kind of advantage for yourself, and thinking that these sources in their own power are able to do these things. If you think that people see these things happening, well, very often it is because devils are allowed to perform certain, wonders. And people say, well, that's a supernatural. I said, well, for us, it appears supernatural, but for the angel in the devils are still angels by their nature. To them, it's a natural. So they're not doing anything that's really beyond their nature. It's just they're allowed to do it in front of us to whatever various degrees. But that's when people, so we see the fine line here. Use the word omen, but omen of blessing. So omen, understanding not in like a negative sense, but omen being, it's signaling. It is preparing us. And when you read this beautiful little poem here, which maybe you might want to type that one out there, sister, and put that in on our YouTube there. Yeah, because it'd be, or on make a little card on Canva about it. It's beautiful. I like it.
I did. I wonder what the melody to it is. Let's see if I can find it anywhere.
Yeah, you can always apply a different melody to it and see what works. Well, anyway, let me finish. Finally, Candlemas Day used to be and still is in many countries the end of the popular Christmas season. Cribs and decorations are taken down with care and stored away for the following Christmas season. The Christmas plants are burned together with the remnants of the Yule log, and ashes are strewed over gardens and fields to ensure wholesome and healthy growth for the coming spring. So this, just like anything else, it's just there was a deeper meaning behind what they did. If people would just remember the spiritual significance, they would not fall into superstition. So here we have a big you have to understand, why is it different? Like someone said, I'm gonna wear the scapular and then everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna go to hell. It's like, no, just like if I wear the brown scapular at Mount Carmel, I wear it, I won't go to hell. That's not what it says. You also have to live a life that that is in conformity with what that scapular represents. That's what is expected of you. So we covered a lot here.
That's all right.
Covered more than I thought we would, especially the first 20 minutes was just us jaw jacking, as Dad would say, jaw jacking. It's a term. I was looking. It's an interesting terms that we have nowadays. But if you don't mind, I know I gotta finish up because I have mass. Shortly. There's a liturgical prayer at the end of this chapter, and I think it would be very proper. There was a word I was looking for. That wasn't proper. Very
fitting.
We'll go with fitting. Yeah, fitting to end it with this prayer. Fitting. I can't remember the word fitting. Almighty and eternal God, we humbly beseech thy majesty, as thy only begotten Son was presented in the temple this day in the substance of our flesh. So let us be presented unto thee with cleansed souls. Deo gracias.
Deo gracias.